Coming up is a top WWE team set to break up, the real reason for one of last week's shocking releases, and Bryan Danielson shoots on WWE contracts. And Ollie's going to be reviewing last night's Dynamite, so stick around for that. And subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all of the latest wrestling news.
Support WrestleTalk!
Tensions have been mounting between father and son tag team Rey and young Walter Mysterio in recent weeks on WWE TV, leading many to speculate that a feud could be on the brink of happening between the Lucha lads. Now, Andrew Zarian of the Mat Men podcast had an update on this, saying that he spoke to a source at WWE. The breakup and feud is happening soon. Which is interesting because both Mysterios have been talking up the idea of Dominic donning the iconic mask during interviews recently and saying that they were looking for ways to pass on the mantle of Rey Mysterio. Though Dominic did recently tell Sportskeeda that he doesn't want to get in the ring with his dad, as he thinks there is so much more that they can still do. But what you want and what you get in WWE never quite match up, do they? There's also no word on timings for this supposed breakup and feud, but we are close to WrestleMania season, and this kind of feels like a WrestleMania match, if you ask me. So last week we hit with yet more WWE releases, and there were some shocking names amongst them, and definitely one of the weirdest was B-Fab, who had just been called up to SmackDown alongside Hit Row. Now, Ringside News have been shedding some light on the real reason for her release, saying a tenured member of WWE Creative told them the group was deemed to be just fine without her. Ouch. And it's a double ouch when you consider that B-Fab signed a new contract the week before her release. And obviously the cuts caused quite the stir in the wrestling world. And now, Bryan Danielson, a man who has been fired by WWE twice, has waded into the fray, saying, "I feel like it's not right." I kind of get this. It's one thing if somebody does something bad. If you're under contract and you're not happy with the company, if they can fire you and give you 90 days, you should be able to give them 90 days to be released from your contract. On the flip side, if they're only firing you because of budget cuts when they're more profitable than ever, I just don't think that's right. Bryan also pointed out the unique position he's in as his stepfather-in-law John Laurinaitis is the man to make the calls citing budget cuts when talent are released. He also pointed out that he always thought WWE's way was unfair, but it's just the way that wrestling is and it works. Except Tony Khan came in and he doesn't do that. AEW from a money standpoint make way less money than WWE. Things like that led me to want to go to AEW as well. However, Danielson has also been talking up his tenure with AEW in an interview with Ariel Helwani on MMA Hour, saying that he is with the company for the next 3 years, but the big question is, will he re-sign when that contract runs out? No. He probably won't. When asked whether this would be his last contract, he said, "I don't know. I think so. When I think about it in my head right now, I feel invincible. My body feels the best it's ever felt since I was in my 20s. When I signed this deal though, Brie Bella and I were thinking it would be my last contract." Ollie's Dynamite review is coming up in just a moment, but first, a quick word from today's sponsor.
Before we get on with the rest of the episode, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to this video's sponsor, The Morning Brew, a witty and informative daily newsletter out Monday to Sunday that you can subscribe to for free using our link in the video description below. But what is The Morning Brew? Well, it's actually a lot like the WrestleTalk news, just in email form and for stuff other than wrestling, like stocks, tech, finance, business, a bit of pop culture, and actually, one time they did cover WWE when Vince botched the XFL. I know that, you see, because I've been reading The Morning Brew for almost 2 years now. I was trying to limit the amount of time I spent reading real-life news, because real-life news, I don't know if you've seen, is terrifying. They call it doom scrolling for a reason, but I also wanted something that was funny and a bit silly too, kind of like how we approach wrestling news on this channel. I found The Morning Brew and have never looked back. It has a roundup of all the day's biggest stories, stock market reports, which now includes my precious Bitcoin to the moon, ma! Recommendations of interesting articles and more puns than a podcast with Andy Datson. They do this one feature, and this is a real insight into how cool I am in real life. They do this one feature as a silly bit at the end sometimes, where they list the ingredients of a processed food and you've got to guess what it is. I do this with my lady partner every time, and I'm not kidding, she often gets it with just 2 ingredients. Look, what I'm trying to say is I read Morning Brew every day. It makes me laugh, it makes me smarter, and it helps me keep up to date with what's going on in the world without ever having to engage with Twitter. It takes 5 minutes to read and you're all caught up, so I really recommend clicking the link in the video description below to subscribe and check them out. The whole process takes just 15 seconds, and every sign up really helps us out out here at WrestleTalk 2. Brew that brew. Now it's time for my review of AEW Dynamite in about 5 minutes. Ahead of his tournament final against Miro this Friday, Bryan Danielson opened the forbidden door to New Japan, a roster with Okada, Ishii, Suzuki and Tanahashi to find Rocky Romero. I love Rocky. I really like Rocky. I just thought an angle with Miro, who only got a video package on this episode, would have been better. Although in that video package he did get the line, "It's not personal, you just have to say goodbye to your wife so I can say hello to mine." My wife now. Romero and Danielson traded submissions, with Bryan making Rocky tap in a tequila sunrise, putting over the idea that Bryan has a million ways to beat someone. And Miro has one way to lose: his neck. It's pretty bad. The Inner Circle walked out for a promo segment next when American Top Team attacked them on the ramp, building to Dan Lambert powerbombing Chris Jericho through a table off the second rope. I say powerbombing, but what I really mean is...
that was falling with style.
Ethan Page promised Lambert will pin Jericho at Full Gear, and right now he's going to tap him out as Lambert locked on the walls of Jericho while screaming, "It's called a Boston Crab." This was a nice bit of heat for the heels after the babyfaces got one over on them last week. It's weird having a women's match in the first hour of Dynamite. Tony Khan has his formula, and it's a women's match at 1 hour 20 minutes into the show. Anna Jay was mostly worked over in the 6-woman tag, but Ty Conti ultimately got the pin on Rebel while staring directly at her Full Gear opponent Britt Baker. As has been the case for a year now, the crowd were most into Baker versus Thunder Rosa. Maybe you should get back to that soon. Anthony Bowens took on Jungle Boy next, which meant an acclaimed rap. Max Caster referenced Jungle Boy not being able to cut promos well, and how he leaves his girlfriend alone with 7 guys. Hey, the Dark Order are nice boys. Just watching out for that Stu Grayson. The Acclaimed are such a good act, and it's great to see Bowens get another singles match after his Danielson showing on Friday. AEW genuinely feels like a place where you're rewarded for doing well. What a concept. Jungle Boy fought through Max Caster interference though and made Bowens tap in the snare trap. But his victory was short-lived as out came Bobby Fish. Bobby Fish, of former NXT Undisputed Era fame, beating up Jungle Boy, who Adam Cole, also of former NXT Undisputed Era fame, is currently feuding with. Could this mean the two are somehow in cahoots? Are they coexisting? Yes. That's exactly what it means, because the very next segment saw Cole introduce the Young Bucks to his good friend Fish, contracting him to take out Jungle Boy this Friday, which caused the Bucks' insider referencing hearts to explode, effectively doing their Twitter bios in real time, saying things like, "There's no dispute. Right now is the era of the Super Click." With Kyle O'Reilly's NXT contract reportedly expiring next month, could this actually be the seeds of a Dream Undisputed Era versus Elite storyline? CM Punk and Eddie Kingston were yelling at each other in the car park like it's Friday night in Dartford when the Lytton Tree closes. Wardlow won a squash match against Wheeler Yuta. Not really sure why this was on the Go Home show, but the crowd started to cheer for Wardlow, which bodes well for his inevitable babyface push. The Hardy family office then attacked the best friends at ringside, giving Cassidy a twist of fate into a chair. Thanks for your support on Patreon, Ryan B. Bad and Chris the Cypriot Sensation Petru. You can get your own shout out by going to patreon.com/WrestleTalk. I know he's retired a bunch of times already, but Lio Rush is seriously incredible. I hope he can stay healthy both physically and mentally, because this could be the first great run of his career. He let his partner Dante Martin get the pin in an insanely athletic match against Matt Sydal and Lee Moriarty. As great as that bout was though, I was all in for the battle of the most miserable men in the locker room, Dax Harwood versus Pac. They had a super physical match from the start, with Pac making Dax's chest pour blood, he chopped it so hard. And they somehow found a way to make the guy fighting for the title this weekend tapping out immediately, a genius protecting finish. Dax submitted to the Brutalizer so fast because he knew Pac wouldn't let go, and he's prioritizing Full Gear. But then, it was time to enter.
You've just crossed over into the
Cody
zone.
The lights cut out and came back up with Andrade and Malachi Black, so Andrade can teleport too now, which brought out the Lucha Bros for the save and a hilariously long Cody running through the crowd. If he stands close enough to as many people as he can, maybe they'll cheer him. The babyfaces stood tall, and AEW booked Cody and Pac versus Andrade and Black for Full Gear. And the main event was a contract signing. What is this? Friday Night SmackDown? It's weird to see AEW do an in-ring segment like this, but there was enough emotion and one brilliant twist to make it stand out. The Dark Order and the Elite were shown leaving the arena before the break, so it was just Kenny Omega and Hangman Page in the ring. Alone, they traded lines about Kenny having another tag partner he felt he could never live up to, a reference to Kota Ibushi, while Omega turned the emotion sincere, saying he always loved Page. Maybe one day they can be friends again, but this Saturday, let's kill it. He's doing this because he loves him. Then the cameraman in the ring decks Page with his camera. The guy takes his mask off to reveal it's Don Callis with a fake moustache and goatee. A fake moustache and goatee he did not need because he already had the mask on. This is sublime heel work. The crazy thing about the execution here is that there was a few times where I was like, this camera guy's a bit annoying. He's in the wrong place and getting in the way of the shot. Never once did I think it was an angle, despite it being one of the most overdone spots in wrestling. The cameraman is actually a wrestling personality in disguise. I enjoyed being well and truly worked. The closing visual was Omega signing the contract in Hangman Page's blood. What did you think of Dynamite? Let me know in the comments. 79% of you went for the undisputed Super Click in our poll on a poll match on the community tab. Well, this wasn't as good or focused as some other AEW Go Home shows, probably because Rampage has split the angles. The wrestling was fantastic, the matches were built well, and the main event segment was surprisingly effective. This week's Dynamite is 4 out of 5. Now go watch our interview with the Iconics, who now go by the Inspiration.
I feel like it was the perfect fit for us. There were, not to toot our own horn, but we had many options. And what it came down to, Jess and I just felt like we just fit perfectly with Impact in the Knockouts division. They just use their talent so incredibly well. And the women are just, put on a pedestal, which they should be. They're so good.